AI won't take your job. But it will take your company when your competitors start building their entire operating model around it. While you guys, you're still using it to write emails and create PowerPoint presentations. In the last 9 months, I've been opening most of my closed-door conversations with that line. The C-suite boardrooms of commodity traders specialising in agri, metals and energy. People who've spent their entire career building real businesses, who've been through multiple cycles and think they've seen it all. And every time, without fail, that opening line does something to the room. Phones go down, people start sitting forward, and the conversation begins. The conversation their competitors are having about AI has completely changed. It used to be, AI is interesting, let's see how this develops. Now, the only question they have is, how do we build our own agentic commodities operating model? Recently, I walked into a similar room, this time with no slides. Actually, I had a full AI-generated slide deck ready to go, but I didn't use it. Because there's no point giving a Web 2 presentation on something that's about to redesign how the firm thinks, decides, and operates. This conversation we're about to have, this is the presentation. But before we touch on AI, I always ask 3 questions. Outside of work, how many of you actually use AI in your daily life? Not testing it, using it. The second question I normally ask is, how many of you have replaced a Google search with an AI search? And then the last one. Who here in this boardroom genuinely believes that AI is going to take your job? The room reacts the same way every time I drop those questions. A bit of curiosity over there, a bit of hesitation, and a few honest answers. But underneath it, you can feel it. They know something is changing. They just don't know exactly where it hits. So I make it clear. AI is not going to take your job. Not as a CEO, not as a trader, and not as a head of risk. That's not where this goes. But your company, on the other hand, now that's a very, very different conversation. Because this is not a technology shift. It's a competitive advantage shift. And most firms are still treating it like a software decision. Which vendor should I use? Which tool should I use? Where do I run a pilot? These are wrong questions. These are not the ones you should be asking. Look, here's what's actually happening, okay? The history of competitive edge in commodity trading is very, very straightforward. The edge comes from relationships. The edge comes from informations others didn't have, from a balance sheet that could hold longer, from execution that moved faster. The edge comes from the instinct built over decades of being in the market. Those things still matter, and I want to be really, really clear about that, because that's where some confusion comes in. But yes, something is shifting underneath it all. The edge is moving. The edge that we once had in commodities is definitely shifting and moving. From who has information to who can interpret it faster. Who runs the best operations to who has intelligence embedded in every decision point across the firm. From who has access to who can compress the time between signal and action. You see, that's not a technology shift. That's a competitive shift in architecture. And it will show up in the P&L before most of us realize what's happening. So the real question isn't which tools to buy. The real question is this. What happens when your competitor starts making better decisions than you, faster than you, with tighter controls than you? Because that's already happening, quietly. And that's the way the commodities industry works. We do things quietly. We don't make a fuss, we don't make an announcement, and we certainly don't tell our competitors what we're doing. The best firms right now aren't experimenting with AI. They're reorganizing everything around it. They're not asking where AI fits inside the current process. They're asking where friction, delay, and poor visibility are hurting economics. And they're rebuilding around it. That fundamentally is a different starting point. And once that rebuild happens, the gap doesn't open slowly. It opens all at once. Speed changes, decision quality changes, control changes. And from the outside, it doesn't look like AI, it just looks like a better run business. Because by the time it's obvious from the outside, the advantage has already been built on the inside. So I told that room something very, very uncomfortable. You are not competing with AI. You are competing with a firm that has already rebuilt itself around it. And that firm will see earlier, decide faster, and control risk in real time, while everyone else is still trying to understand what just happened. That's when the room goes all quiet. Because it stops being a conversation about technology and it becomes a leadership one. So let me leave you with something very, very simple. Don't start with AI. Start with friction. Where are you slow? Where are you blind? Where are you reacting too late? That's where the shift begins. Not with tools, not with hype, not with a pilot that runs 6 months and produces a slide deck with a decision that needs to be made. Do you wait or do you move early? Because in this cycle, early doesn't mean ahead. It means you survive a gap that's already starting to open. And that gap is opening right now, very, very quietly.